So the four candidates: Lincoln, Breckenridge was a Southern Democrat, Stephen Douglas was a Northern Democrat, and respectively pro-slavery, and we'll talk about that. So there's Lincoln, Breckenridge, Stephen Douglas, and John Bell of Tennessee. So the next guy I'm going to do a little bit about is John Breckenridge of Kentucky. He was a Southern Democrat. He was pro-slavery. He was a cousin of Mary Todd Lincoln. He supported Douglas on the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He was against, a lot of these guys were against secession, but when their states voted to secede, they went, I've got to stay with my state. People's loyalties were to their states. Before the Civil War, people would say the United States are. After the Civil War, people said the United States is. It's a real change in our national view of ourselves. Breckenridge was the youngest vice president ever elected. He was 35 when he was elected, the constitutional minimum. He was 36 when he was inaugurated in March. He served in the Senate, and one thing that stands out to me about Breckenridge is that he was the fourth and last Secretary of War for the Confederate States. And as Richmond was falling, he ensured that the archives of the Confederate political bodies and military units were preserved rather than destroyed. And I've always admired him for that. Right now I'm working on a biography of Stephen Douglas, but I'd like to read a biography of Breckenridge. He's a real interesting fellow. So he'd served and fought at Shiloh as general, so he's a real interesting fellow. And this song is Breckenridge and Lane. His running mate was Joseph Lane of Oregon. Heard of Lane County? That's the guy. He was. Did you know that Lincoln turned down being, what did they call it first? Secretary?
Territorial governor.
Well, yeah, he's the governor, asked to be the governor second, but he's asked for well, anyhow, he was asked to be a territorial governor, and he said, don't think so, guys. He was ambitious enough. He didn't want to go out here and be into obscurity, and Mary Todd went, you're not going out there. We're not going out to Oregon. We're staying here. She was more ambitious than he was, I think. So Lane was our first territorial governor and one of our first two senators. And he fought valiantly in the Mexican-American War, but being a pro-slavery candidate ruined him, and losing always ruins you politically, usually. So, Breckenridge and Lane. It's an old song called the Lowback Car, a type of carriage. The battlefield is now in view. Democrats prepare. We'll give our votes for Breckenridge and place him in the chair. The cabinet is understood. Breckenridge will go. If Pat is ready for the fight, he'll be president, you know. He'll grease himself, he'll please, no fear at all of that. For Pat has been, as we have seen, a good sound Democrat. Republicans and Douglas will soon be put to rout. If Aaron's sons are wide awake, they'll have to wheel about. So rally all, both great and small, the battle day is near. We'll all go in for Breckenridge and place him in the chair. Yes, we'll all go in for Breckenridge and place him in the chair. Well, I always forget to mention before that song, you heard the terms Pat, Aaron's sons, the Rogues He'll Grease. This was a song to recruit Irish voters. You'd think that the Irish, in their experience, would be against slavery, but wasn't necessarily so. They were afraid that the freed slaves would take all the good jobs that the Irish had. Irish are about that far above slavery. You'll see old photographs. Irish need not apply, no Irish. Our great-grandfather got to America at 6 years old in 1866 as an indentured servant. And I'm trying to get Elliot to do some research on indentured servants, but they took the place of the freed slaves, the Irish kids.